Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, grab something warm and get comfortable. This one is going to stay with you. The bar was called Obsidian, and it sat on the 32nd floor of a glass tower in Gangnam, Seoul. It was the kind of place where the ice in your glass cost more than most people's dinner. Low light, low music, low voices. Everyone inside understood the unspoken rule. You did not make a scene at Obsidian. Kang Sejin sat at the far end of the bar, alone. He always sat alone. His suit was charcoal, perfectly pressed, the collar open, exactly one button. A glass of single malt whiskey stood untouched in front of him. He was not there to drink. He was there because his aide, Park Hyun-woo, had told him the representative from the Daegu Consortium would pass through the lounge at 10, and Sejin wanted to be seen before any meeting was scheduled. Presence was its own message. He had built the Kang Syndicate on that principle for 11 years. He was 34 years old, and people said he had no expressions. He had one. He just reserved it. At the other end of the bar, a group of women were celebrating something. One of them was wearing a sash. The laughter was quiet but real, the kind that belonged to people who had known each other for a long time. Sejin noticed them the way he noticed everything, catalogued and dismissed. Then one of the women pointed at him. He did not look away. He never looked away first. Her name was Oh Ji-yeon, and she had just been handed a dare. Him, her friend Soo-jung said, pointing with zero subtlety at the man at the end of the bar. Go kiss him. We said a cheek kiss, Ji-yeon said. We said any kiss. You agreed to any kiss. Nayeon, back me up. Nayeon, who was on her third glass of wine and had the moral flexibility that came with it, nodded firmly. Any kiss. Ji-yeon looked at the man. He was looking back at her already. Most men, when caught staring, looked away or smiled. This man did neither. He simply continued looking, as though she were a mildly interesting weather pattern. He looks like he's never laughed in his life, Ji-yeon said. Which is exactly why it's funny, Soo-jung said. Ji-yeon was 28, a kindergarten teacher in Mapo-gu, and she had never once in her life approached a stranger in a bar. She was also, she would admit privately, a little tired of being the responsible one. The one who said no. The one who drove everyone home. Tonight, for 1 hour, she had promised herself she would be different. She straightened her dress. Fine, she said. 1 cheek kiss, 10 seconds. I come straight back. She walked toward him. Sejin watched her cross the room. She was not nervous, or if she was, she hid it well. Her posture was good. She looked at him the whole way, which most people could not do. She stopped beside his stool. I was dared to kiss you, she said. I'm going to do it on the cheek, and then go back to my friends. I just wanted to warn you first because that seemed polite. He said nothing. She interpreted that as permission, which it was not, and leaned in. Her lips touched his cheek. Warm, brief. She smelled like something clean, like laundry dried in the sun. She pulled back. Thank you, she said. Sorry for the interruption. She turned to leave. Sit down, he said. She turned back. What? You warned me first. He looked at his glass. That was unexpected. Sit down. She should have said no. She knew this. She had completed the dare, and her friends were already cheering softly from across the bar. She sat down. His name, he told her, was Sejin. He did not offer a last name. She did not ask. In Seoul, people often operated on first names in bars, she thought. She gave him hers. Ji-yeon, he repeated, like he was filing it. You don't smile, she said. No. Were you waiting for someone? Yes. Should I go? He looked at her for a long moment. He's late. It doesn't matter. They talked, or rather, she talked, and he listened with an attention that was slightly unsettling. The kind of listening where someone remembers everything. She told him she taught 5-year-olds. He asked what that required. She said patience. She said the ability to explain the same thing 17 times without sighing. She said the willingness to find a crayon drawing of a dog genuinely impressive. Do you? He said. Do I what? Find them genuinely impressive. She smiled. Every single time. He looked at her as though she had said something in a language he only partially understood. She asked what he did. He said import and export. She nodded in the way people nodded when they suspected that was not the whole answer. At 11, Park Hyunwoo appeared at Sejin's elbow and murmured something in his ear. Sejin stood. The person you were waiting for? Jiyeon asked. Yes. Okay. She stood too, which surprised him. She extended her hand. Thank you for not being strange about the kiss. He shook her hand. His grip was very firm. You were kind to warn me. He walked away without looking back. She went back to her friends. Well? Soo-jung demanded. He told me to sit down, Jiyeon said, still slightly bewildered. And? I sat down. Soo-jung stared at her. He told you to sit down, and you just sat down? Jiyeon thought about it. He had a very certain kind of voice. She did not expect to see him again. She did not think about him more than a handful of times over the next week, and she told herself those handful of times were natural, because it had been an unusual evening. Then he walked into her kindergarten. Not as a parent. He was standing in the front office of Harang Kindergarten in Mapo-gu on a Thursday morning, speaking to the director, a stout woman named Cha Yoon-suk, who looked slightly starstruck. Jiyeon stopped in the hallway. He saw her immediately. Teacher Oh, Director Cha said, waving her over. This is Mr. Kang. He's considering enrolling his nephew here in the spring. I asked him to take a short tour. Kang Sejin, he said, as if she needed reminding. Oh, Jiyeon, she said, as if he needed reminding. Director Cha beamed between them. You've met? Briefly, Sejin said. Jiyeon gave the tour. She showed him the art room, the reading corner, the small garden where children grew radishes, and took the responsibility very seriously. He walked behind her and said almost nothing. She talked to fill the silence, which she hated herself for slightly. In the garden, she stopped and turned to face him. You don't have a nephew, she said. A pause. No, he said. So why are you here? He looked past her at the small row of radish plants. Each one had a child's name on a little stick. He read them. She could see him reading them, one by one. I wanted to know your name, he said. Your full name. It took 2 days. She stared at him. You tracked me down. Yes. That's alarming. Probably. You should have just asked at the bar. I didn't think I would want to know. She did not know what to do with that sentence. Mr. Kang, she said carefully. I'm a kindergarten teacher. I live in a small apartment in Mapo-gu. I split a Netflix account with my sister. Whatever you think you found interesting at the bar was probably just have dinner with me, he said. No. Why? Because men who track women down to their workplaces are not men I have dinner with. He nodded slowly, like she had made a reasonable argument. If I had asked at the bar? She thought about it honestly. Maybe. Then the bar, he said. Next Friday. Obsidian. If you want to come, come. If not, I won't look for you again. He walked back through the garden and out of the school. Director Cha was waiting by the front door with an expression of barely contained curiosity. Well? She said. Jiyeon looked at the little radish plants with their name sticks. I think I might be having dinner next Friday, she said. She went. She wore a blue dress. He was already there. That dinner became 2 dinners. 2 became 6. 6 weeks of careful, deliberate evenings. He paid for everything. He opened doors not as a performance, but because the thought of her reaching for a door handle before him seemed to cause him something close to distress. He did not talk about his work. She did not push. He asked about her students with a focus that seemed almost academic, as though childhood were a subject he had never studied and now found urgent. On the 7th week after dinner, standing outside the restaurant in the January cold, he kissed her. Not brief, like hers had been. She drove home with her hands gripping the steering wheel a little too hard. They were together for 4 months. Then came the night she heard 2 of his men talking in the hallway outside his apartment and understood, with a clarity that sat in her chest like a swallowed stone, exactly what kind of import and export Kang Sejin ran. She did not confront him immediately. She spent 3 days being careful. She looked things up. The name Kang, in certain circles in Seoul, was not a name that needed explanation. On the 4th day, she came to him. He knew before she spoke. "You know," he said. "Tell me it's not true." He said nothing. She had her answer. "I can't," she said simply. She did not cry. She was the kind of woman who processed pain quietly and completely. "I work with children. I can't have this near them." "It doesn't touch you." "It touches everything around you. You know that." He did know that. He had always known that. He had told himself it didn't matter, and the 4 months had been the longest continuous lie he had ever told himself. "I'll walk away," he said. Even he was surprised he said it. She looked at him for a long time. "You can't walk away from what you are." "What I do," he said. "Not what I am." "Sejin." Her voice was tired and careful. "I believe you think that. I don't think it's true yet." She left. He stood in the center of his apartment that cost more than her apartment building, and felt something he had not felt since he was 8 years old, sitting in a hospital corridor while his father told him that crying was a weakness they could not afford. He felt small. He did not go after her. That was the act of cruelty he would spend years examining. Not a dramatic act. Not violence. Simply the decision to let the door close and not open it, because opening it would mean becoming someone he did not yet know how to be. He poured his energy back into the Kang Syndicate. 3 months later, Park Hyun-woo came to him with a look on his face that he reserved for information he did not want to deliver. "What?" Sejin said. "I received something this morning. Someone left it at the front desk downstairs." Hyun-woo placed an envelope on the desk. Inside were 2 photographs. The first was of Oh Ji-yeon, taken recently, entering a medical building. The second was a picture of Sejin and Ji-yeon together outside a restaurant, circled in red pen. At the bottom of the second photograph, written in neat block letters, "She is carrying your debt." Sejin's jaw tightened. "Who sent this?" he said quietly. "We're working on it. We believe it may be related to the Lee Jae-hong situation. He's been moving operatives back into Seoul for the past month." Lee Jae-hong. A former partner who had been forced out of the syndicate 2 years earlier for skimming. He had been making noise in Busan. Sejin had assumed the noise was just noise. He looked at the photograph of Ji-yeon. She was carrying something. Something in a bag. She was looking slightly to the left of the camera, not knowing she was being photographed. And he looked more carefully. She looked tired. The kind of tired that was specific. "Find out what building that is," he said. "The medical one." Hyun-woo found out within the hour. It was an obstetrics clinic in Mapo-gu. Sejin sat with that information for a very long time. This is the part of the story, if you're watching right now, where everything changes. If you haven't liked this video yet, please do it now. It genuinely helps this channel more than you know. And subscribe if you haven't, because what happens next with Sejin and Ji-yeon is something you will not want to miss in our next story. Now, back to Seoul. He went to her apartment. He should have called. He knew he should have called. He rang the bell anyway. She opened the door, and for a moment they both just stood there. She was wearing an oversized sweater. Her hair was in a clip. She looked tired in the specific way he had been thinking about for an hour. "Sejin," she said. It was a warning and a greeting at the same time. "You're pregnant," he said. She went very still. Not surprised. Not surprised he knew. Surprised by the word coming from his mouth. From this mouth. In this hallway. "Come inside," she said finally. The apartment was small and warm and cluttered in a way that felt lived in. There were children's drawings on the refrigerator, a stack of grating on the table, a mug of tea going cold. She sat on the couch. He sat across from her. "How long?" he said. 11 weeks. He did a calculation she could see him doing. She watched his face and learned in 3 seconds that Park Hyun-woo had been right. Kang Se-jin did have an expression. She had simply never seen it before. "Why didn't you tell me?" he said. "I left you," she said. "I left because of what you are. The leaving didn't change just because—" She stopped. "This baby doesn't get to grow up in that world, Se-jin. That was my decision to make. She doesn't get to make it alone." "He," she said quietly. "Or she." A silence. "I'm going to be in this child's life," he said. "You cannot bring what you carry into this child's life. Then I'll put it down." She looked at him. This time it was not 4 months ago, when the words had sounded possible but untested. This time she said, "If you mean that, it will take time. It will take longer than you think. And until it's done, he said, "tell me what you need." She studied him for a long time. "I need to know that whoever sent those photographs won't come back," she said. He went very still. "How do you know about—" "Because the same envelope was slipped under my classroom door 2 days ago," she said. "I have children in that room, Se-jin. 5-year-olds. He stood up. "Get your bag," he said. "You're not staying here tonight." He moved her to a building in Yongsan that his syndicate maintained as a secure residence. He did not ask her. She allowed it because she had seen the photograph, and because she was 11 weeks pregnant, and tired enough to accept one night of someone else making decisions. In the morning, she looked at the apartment, which was clean and large and quiet, and said, "This is not a long-term solution." "I know," he said. "I'm going back to my apartment in 2 days." "I know. I want you to understand that I'm not—" She stopped. "I'm not coming back to you." "I know," he said again. She looked at him. "Then what are you doing?" "Right now, I'm making sure that no one threatens you." He sat at the kitchen table. "After that, I'm going to spend however long it takes becoming someone you'd trust near our child." She said nothing. "Those are different problems," he said. "I'm starting with the first one." Lee Jae-hong was found within 72 hours. He had been operating out of a warehouse complex in Incheon, running a small crew of 6, nursing a grudge that had curdled over 2 years into something obsessive. His plan, Hyun-woo reported, had been to threaten Se-jin through Ji-yeon, to force Se-jin into a negotiation from a position of fear. He had significantly misjudged Kang Se-jin. Se-jin went to Incheon himself. Hyun-woo drove. 3 men came with them. He met Lee Jae-hong in the warehouse. Jae-hong was sweating before Se-jin said a single word. The crew had been removed. It was just the 2 of them, and the cold, concrete smell of the warehouse, and the particular silence that followed Kang Se-jin into rooms. Jae-hong started talking. He talked for a long time. Justifications, grievances, history. Se-jin listened. When Jae-hong finished, Se-jin said, "She's a kindergarten teacher." Jae-hong blinked. "She teaches 5-year-olds, Se-jin said. "She grows radishes with them. She finds their drawings impressive every single time." He looked at Jae-hong the way he had looked at him across a negotiating table 2 years ago, except that now there was something new in it, something that was not calculation. "You put a photograph under the door of a room full of 5-year-olds. Jae-hong said nothing. "Leave Seoul," Se-jin said. "Leave South Korea. I am giving you this option one time." "And if I don't, you will," Se-jin said simply. He turned and walked out. Hyun-woo fell into step beside him. He said nothing for a long time. Then quietly, "That was merciful." "It was practical," Se-jin said, but Hyun-woo, who had worked for Kang Se-jin for 9 years, and rarely spoke and noticed everything, said nothing more. He had heard the way Se-jin said the word radishes. He filed it carefully and said nothing. The pregnancy progressed. Se-jin called every evening at 8. Not to talk about them, she had made that boundary clearly, but to ask how she felt, to ask if she needed anything. Once, when she had a sudden craving for the specific red bean buns from a bakery in Sinchon that had been her grandmother's favorite, he had them delivered to her apartment within 45 minutes, without asking how he had found out which bakery. She had looked at the bag and thought, this man has resources that are genuinely unsettling, and I'm going to have to deal with that. Her mother, a woman named Oh Gyeongja, who stood 5 feet tall and possessed the moral authority of someone considerably larger, came to Seoul in Ji-yeon's 5th month. She met Sejin once, briefly, in the lobby of Ji-yeon's apartment building. She looked at him for a long time. He stood very straight and said, I'm trying to do the right thing. Trying, Gyeongja said. Doing, he corrected. Gyeongja looked at her daughter. He's stubborn. Yes, Ji-yeon said. So are you. Gyeongja picked up her bag. Don't waste too much time being proud. She said this to both of them equally. Their daughter was born on a Wednesday in October. Her name was Kang Areum. It meant beauty. Ji-yeon had chosen it. Sejin had been given the last name to put on the form, and had held the pen for a long moment before signing. He had been in the waiting room for 11 hours. Hyunwoo had sat with him for all 11. Neither of them had spoken much. When the nurse brought him to the room, and he saw Ji-yeon holding the baby, something happened to his face that he could not control, and did not try to. She's small, he said. His voice was different. She's exactly right, Ji-yeon said. She was exhausted and luminous in the way that particular exhaustion sometimes produces. He sat in the chair beside the bed. Ji-yeon passed him the baby. He had held things of value his entire life. Documents, territory, power. He had not held anything that mattered before. Ariam made a sound like a question. Hello? He said. His voice was barely a sound. She made the noise again. He looked at Ji-yeon. What does she want? Ji-yeon almost smiled. She's just talking. She's been alive for 40 minutes. She has things to say. He looked back at Ariam. I'll learn, he said. He wasn't sure if he was talking to the baby or to Ji-yeon. He thought maybe both. The unmaking of the Kang Syndicate took 19 months. It was not dramatic. It was the most painstaking work of Sejin's life, which was saying something because building it had taken 11 years. Territories transferred, contracts dissolved or passed to neutral parties. Men pensioned, reassigned, cut loose with enough to start clean. Hyunwoo, who had a degree in business administration he had never used, moved into legitimate private security consulting with Sejin's full financial backing. The Lee family, rivals for years, expected a war when the Kang withdrawal began. Sejin met with Lee Dong-soo himself, a 70-year-old patriarch who had been in the business since before Sejin was born. You're leaving, Lee Dong-soo said. Not a question. Not quite belief. I'm leaving, Sejin confirmed. Because of a woman. Because of a child, Sejin said. A child I intend to look in the eye when she's old enough to ask me who I am. Lee Dong-soo looked at him for a long time. My son asked me that, he said quietly. 30 years ago. He said nothing else. Sejin walked out of that meeting and did not look back. During the 19 months, he saw Ariam twice a week. She was a serious baby who became a serious toddler, which should not have surprised anyone. She had her father's steady watchfulness, and her mother's warmth operating in sequence. First the look that took everything in, then the smile that gave everything back. At 14 months she said her first clear word. She was sitting on the kitchen floor of Ji-yeon's apartment surrounded by board books, and Sejin was sitting on the floor across from her, which he did without being asked now, and she picked up a board book and held it out to him and said, with perfect clarity, Read. He took the book. He read it. All 12 pages. She listened with her whole body, leaning slightly forward. When he finished, she took it back and held it out again. He read it again. Ji-yeon stood in the kitchen doorway and watched, and did not say anything. Later, after Ariam was asleep, Ji-yeon made tea, and they sat at the kitchen table. The table was still cluttered with grading. It was still a small apartment. The Daegu Consortium approached me last month, Sejin said. They want me to run the legitimate side of a shipping operation. Full legal, no connections. Ji-yeon looked at her tea. I said yes, he said. She looked up. I need something to do, he said. I'm not a man who does nothing well. I know, she said. A pause. How much longer? She said. He knew what she was asking. 4 months, maybe 6. Hyunwoo is handling the last of it. She nodded. He stood to leave. He always left before it got late, always at the same hour, respecting the boundaries she had not rescinded, and he had not pressed. At the door, he stopped. He had something in his coat pocket that had been there for 3 weeks. He had told himself he was waiting for the right moment. The real reason was that he was afraid, and he was still learning that this was allowed. He took out a small box. Not a ring box. A flat, square box wrapped in brown paper. He put it on the table beside her hand. What is this? She said. Open it later, he said. When I'm gone. He left. She waited approximately 4 seconds, then opened it. Inside was a bracelet. Simple silver, very thin, and a folded note. She unfolded it. It said in his precise handwriting, "The first thing I have ever bought that was not about power. I don't know if you'll wear it. I wanted you to have it regardless." She sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Then she put the bracelet on. 6 months later, on a Saturday afternoon, Kang Sejin signed the last document. Hyunwoo witnessed it. That's everything, Hyunwoo said. Sejin set down the pen. He looked at the document. He waited for loss. There was some. There was also something else, quieter and more unexpected, that he thought might be relief. You should call her, Hyunwoo said. I was going to go over. Call first. Hyunwoo permitted himself the smallest expression. You always just appear. It startles people. Sejin looked at him. You never said that before. I was employed by the head of a criminal syndicate, Hyunwoo said pleasantly. I'm choosing my moments differently now. Sejin almost smiled. He called first. It's done, he said, when she picked up. A silence on the line. Come over, she said. Ariam was 2 years and 3 months old when she asked the question. She was sitting on Sejin's lap on the couch while he read to her, a different book now, about a bear who could not find his hat, and she stopped him in the middle by putting her small hand flat on the page. Appa, she said. This was new. She had started saying it 2 weeks ago, and both he and Jiyeon had agreed not to make a thing of it, silently, without discussing it, the way 2 people agree on something when they have been circling each other long enough. Yes, he said. Do you live here? He looked at Jiyeon, who was in the kitchen pretending to read the back of a soy sauce bottle. Not yet, he said. Why? A pause. He thought about it. Because I'm still showing your mama that I changed. Ariam considered this with the full gravity of a 2-year-old. Changed like how? Like, he stopped. Like a bear who finds his hat. She looked at the book. She looked at him. The bear doesn't change. He just looks. Sejin said nothing. A 2-year-old had just made a better point than most people he had faced across negotiating tables. You should just look for the hat, Ariam said, and flipped the page herself. From the kitchen, Jiyeon made a sound that was possibly a cough. He moved in 3 weeks later. He did not bring much. He had a lot. He brought a little. There was something deliberate about showing up to a small apartment in Mapo-gu with 1 bag and a box of books, about allowing a small space to become the biggest territory he had ever tried to hold. He assembled a shelf for Ariam's room. He measured wrong the first time. He said a word under his breath and then stopped because a 2-year-old was watching. Wrong, Ariam said helpfully. I know, he said. Mama measures twice. He looked at the shelf. He looked at his daughter. How do you know that? She says it, Ariam said. Measure twice. Cut once. Your mother, he said, is correct. He measured again. Jiyeon stood in the doorway. He looked up at her. You could have told me about the measuring. You looked focused, she said. Jiyeon. She smiled, a full one this time, the one she had been careful with for 3 years. I know, she said. I know. She crossed the room and crouched beside him and put her hand over his on the measuring tape. Let me. He let her. That evening, Ariam asleep, the apartment quiet, Jiyeon sat on the couch, with her feet tucked under her. Seijin was in the kitchen making tea because he had learned to do this, and it had become one of the small rituals that made up the texture of ordinary life. He brought 2 mugs and sat beside her. The Daegu shipping contract starts next month, he said. I know. It's early mornings. I know. I can do school drop-off if we adjust the... Seijin, she said. What? Stop presenting the plan. He looked at her. You're not in a meeting, she said. You can just sit. He sat. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Outside, Seoul made its usual sounds. Below, someone was playing music faintly. Ariam, somewhere in the apartment, breathed in the steady way sleeping children breathe, like small engines at rest. Seijin looked at Jiyeon's wrist. The bracelet was there. She had worn it every day. I said things, he said, when you left. That night. He stopped. You didn't say anything, she said. That's what I mean. He stared at the tea. I let you go because I didn't know how to be different yet. I knew what you needed to hear. I didn't say it. She waited. I was in love with you, he said. That was the first time. This... He stopped again. Started again. This is something else. Something larger. She was quiet. I'm not asking for anything tonight, he said. I just needed to say it outside my own head. She picked up her tea. She took a sip. Kang Seijin, she said. Yes. You've been living in my apartment for 8 hours, and you're already telling me you love me. I said something larger. That implies love. Yes. She set the mug down. She looked at him sideways. I know, she said for the 3rd time. But this time it was an answer. He put his arm around her and she let him, and they sat in the living room of a small apartment in Mapo-gu while Seoul moved outside the windows, and for the first time in his adult life, Kang Seijin had nothing to manage. It turned out this was the best thing he had ever had. 3 years later. A primary school auditorium in Mapo-gu. Paper stars hung from the ceiling. A banner read Starlight Concert in uneven letters that a group of 5-year-olds had decorated with an enthusiasm that outpaced their fine motor skills. Ariam was in the 2nd row of children on the stage. She was wearing a yellow cardigan and holding a triangle. The triangle appeared to have been assigned to her because the teacher had recognized her steady, serious temperament and given her an instrument that required patience. She spotted her parents in the 4th row. She gave them a nod. Not a wave. A nod. Seijin in the 4th row gave her a nod back. Jiyeon, beside him, laughed. She's exactly like you, she whispered. She's better, he whispered back. Jiyeon leaned against his shoulder. He put his arm around her. Oh Gyeongja was 3 seats over, already prepared to cry at the first note, holding a packet of tissues with the preparedness of someone who had done this calculation well in advance. The children began to play. It was, to be honest, not good music. It was the specific texture of music that 5-year-olds produce, which is less like music and more like enthusiasm, given a physical form. A recorder shrieked. Someone's drum came in 3 beats early. The triangle rang at its correct moment, clear and precise, a single bright note above the noise. Ariam did not look at the audience. She was focused. She struck the triangle at exactly the right instant every time. Kang Seijin, who had run a criminal syndicate for 11 years, who had sat across tables from men who could destroy cities, who had been called the coldest man in Gangnam by people who said it as a compliment, Kang Seijin found the performance genuinely impressive. Every single time. After the concert in the school courtyard, there were rice cake skewers and juice boxes and the particular chaos of children freed from the requirement to hold still. Ariam found them with her triangle still in her hand. I heard you, Seijin said. He crouched to her level. Every note. I didn't miss any, she said. Not one. She considered this a satisfactory review. She held the triangle up. Can I keep this? Ask your teacher, Jiyeon said. She ran off. Seijin straightened. Jiyeon looked up at him in the courtyard lights. Happy? She said. He thought about the word. He had not used it about himself for a long time. He was a man who had spent decades treating happiness as a variable too unstable to factor in. Yes, he said. Simple. Declarative. The most important thing he had ever said in his life. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of this story. You are exactly the kind of viewer that makes this channel worth making. I want to ask you, in the comments below, tell me, what was the moment that got you? Was it Aryam's question about the bear in the hat? Sejin reading the same book twice on the floor? Or that final single note of the triangle rising above all the noise? Tell me below. I read every comment. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. There are so many more stories waiting, and I promise every single one is made with the same care as this one. See you in the next